Have you ever wondered how to tune into God's voice when everything around you feels so chaotic? In today's world, it's easier to get caught up in the hustle and bustle of life than to actually listen to that still small voice within. But recognizing God's voice is so crucial for our spiritual growth and development. It's the key to discerning His will for our lives, to finding peace and guidance in the midst of turmoil, and to deepening our relationship with Him. One of the biggest challenges we face in recognizing God's voice is the sheer amount of noise and distractions that surround us. Our daily lives are filled with the constant ping of notifications, the chatter of social media, and the endless to-do lists that seem to never end. And on top of that, we have our own internal struggles, fears, and doubts that can drown out that gentle whisper of God's voice. It's no wonder that many of us struggle to hear Him above the din of life. Add to that the busyness of modern life, and it's a wonder we can hear ourselves think, let alone hear God's voice. We're constantly on the go, juggling multiple responsibilities and trying to keep up with the demands of our fast-paced world. And in the midst of all that chaos, it's easy to get disconnected from our spiritual selves and lose touch with God's voice. And then there's the issue of our own minds. We're wired to think and reason and analyze, and sometimes we can overthink ourselves right out of hearing God's voice. We might second-guess that gentle nudge or attribute it to our own thoughts and emotions. Or we might get stuck in our own heads, trying to figure out what God is saying rather than simply listening. So how do we tune into God's voice amidst all this noise and distraction? One practical strategy is to prioritize prayer and meditation in our daily lives. By setting aside dedicated time to connect with God, we can quiet our minds and listen for His voice. It doesn't have to be a long, drawn-out affair. Even a few minutes a day can make a world of difference. Another strategy is to create quiet moments in our day, whether that's taking a walk in nature, journaling, or simply sitting in silence. When we create space for God to speak, He will. And we might be surprised at how much more clearly we can hear His voice when we're not surrounded by the constant din of daily life. I remember a time in my own life when I was struggling to hear God's voice. I was going through a difficult season, and I felt lost and disconnected from Him. But one day I decided to take a step of faith and set aside some dedicated time to listen. I went to a quiet spot, got still, and simply asked God to speak. And to my surprise, I heard Him loud and clear. It was like a weight had been lifted off my shoulders, and I felt a sense of peace and direction that I hadn't felt in weeks. That experience taught me the power of intentionality and listening for God's voice. When we make time to listen, when we quiet our minds and hearts, and when we ask God to speak, He will. And it can be life-changing. Looking back on our conversation today, I want to encourage you to be intentional about listening for God's voice amidst life's noise. Whether it's through prayer, meditation, or simply creating quiet moments in your day, make space for God to speak. You never know what you might hear. Thanks so much for watching, and I'd love to hear from you in the comments below. Have you ever had a breakthrough moment when you finally heard God's voice clearly? Share your story with us. And if you're looking for more ways to deepen your spiritual practice, be sure to check out my next video. See you there.